The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
Tonight on Politics Now, Nevada starts the process of kissing the caucus goodbye and saying hello to a first-in-the-nation presidential primary. Plus,
I think it's important that we all do our part to get the public back into this building.
Republicans lay out their priorities in the legislature, including a bill dealing with absentee ballots, and
there's still a lot of confusion and unknown answers.
Some Clark County kids are heading back to class. One principal shows us how she's trying to keep her school safe.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now.
The legislative session is slowly but surely getting underway, and the bill to get rid of Nevada's caucus and make our primary the first in the country is finally written. Thanks for joining us. I'm Vanessa Murphy, and for John Langler this week. It is one of several election-related bills. Assembly Bill 126 was introduced by Speaker Jason Frierson. It would move Nevada to a primary, and it would also set the primary in late January, making us the first in the nation. The movement to change to a primary gained traction 1 year ago after the problems with the Iowa caucus. Nevada Democrats also tried a type of ranked choice voting in the 2020 caucus where you list your top 3 or 5 candidates. UNLV political science associate Professor Rebecca Gill says incorporating that would open up the choice landscape for voters.
All of us, we kind of have a candidate that we might feel closest to, is the one we really, really, really want to win. But then we might second guess ourselves and we get into, well, is this person really going to be electable? And these kinds of questions. And so it can lead voters to actually cast a vote for their second favorite choice or something like that because they think that that's what everybody else is going to do. And if they were to vote for their real first choice, then it would be essentially a wasted vote because they might end up with their least favorite choice. But when you do ranked voting, what this does is it essentially takes that part of the strategy sort of off of the voter's plate.
A separate bill put forward by Republicans, Senate Bill 121, would switch Nevada to open primaries. Right now, we have a closed primary, meaning only Republicans can vote for a Republican presidential candidate and only Democrats for a Democrat. It is sponsored by Republican State Senator Ben Kiefer, who points out that about a third of Nevada's voters are registered as nonpartisan and left out of the process in our current system. The most commented on and controversial bill so far in the legislature might catch you a little by surprise. It's a proposed change to your child's school curriculum. The word government is taken out of education requirements. Civics, financial literacy, and multicultural education are added in. This bill has had more opinions submitted than any other so far, with nearly 1,300. Almost all of those were in opposition to it. A lot of that response is from parents who homeschool their children and say this plan shouldn't apply to them. Committee members say the bill is meant as a way to clarify the law.
I think that there might be some misrepresentation out there, and I'm going to assume that it's benign, that government is now being replaced by multicultural education. I can 100% tell you that is not the case. Civics will encompass government.
Those in support of the bill say more multicultural education needs to be happening in our schools. With no in-person appearances allowed, submitting your opinion online is one of a few avenues to get voices heard. Here are the other most commented on bills. AB 19 had more than 1,300 opinions submitted. Second was the bill with a bunch of unemployment program fixes with nearly 300. And third was a bill that establishes a dark sky designation for certain parts of the state. That one is promoted by the Sierra Club and other environmental groups. The fourth most commented on bill would temporarily suspend parts of teacher evaluations. Assembly Bill 57 is sponsored by the Assembly Committee on Education. 15% of a teacher or administrator's evaluation is based on pupil growth. This would suspend that part until the 2023 school year. It had its first hearing this week. So, can Republicans get any of their priorities through? My I-Team colleague David Charnes interviewed Assembly Deputy Minority Floor Leader Tom Roberts about the state of the session, an election reform bill he's sponsored, and also about that potential primary move.
The beginning of this session has been slow. People aren't in the building. The hearings are the phone calling in, and the technology is great in one aspect, but it's hard to, really hear from people and see people. So when do you expect things to really start picking up?
Bill drafting has been kind of behind. Typically we're hearing a lot more bills earlier than we are now. They extended the deadline for introductions for 2 weeks because of that. So it should start picking up, fairly quickly. We've introduced a number of bills over the last couple of floor sessions. We did not have a floor session today. I think we're up to maybe 150 bills that have been introduced on our side alone. I don't know where they're at on the Senate. With that said, so those are being referred to committees, and committees are starting to schedule hearings. So it should pick up.
AB 134, which is about absentee ballots, about you'd have to request an absentee ballot. It wouldn't automatically be sent to you, obviously in response to AB 4 during the special session. Is this needed election reform in terms of you should request a ballot, then automatically be sent one?
I think there's some safeguards in place with requesting a ballot. With absentee ballots, I think there's during the early parts of the pandemic, mail-in ballots were sent out. There's been some challenges with people getting multiple ballots. I think there were some challenges with removing voters from the rolls. So we sent a lot of ballots out that didn't necessarily need to be sent out. Just from an economic standpoint, I think that's a challenge. So I think we need to clean some of those things up. I don't mind mail-in ballots. I'm not afraid of mail-in ballots. I think there's some challenges with ballot harvesting, with people collecting ballots.
There is a move to make Nevada the first in the nation primary state, get rid of caucuses, which is one thing, but then not only move to primaries, but make us the first state to do that. Obviously, there's being the first is debatable, but should we move to primaries?
Well, look, I participated in caucuses before, and I'll tell you, I wasn't a big fan of it. I like primaries better, and I think a majority of my constituents that have reached out to me prefer primaries. I think the challenge you have is I don't believe that we should hold two separate primaries, right? If we could move the regular primary process back to where we're first in the West, roll everything back. I think that's doable. I think the challenge is that every state is trying to be the first. I think it's important that we all do our part to get the public back into this building. We need to get our kids back in school. We need to get our kids back to playing sports, and we've been hunkered down too long, and I think Nevadans have done their part, and I think we need to start moving back to some kind of normalcy.
Roberts said vaccinations start next week. That will help efforts to get the public back in the legislative building. Separately, a group of Republican lobbyists have filed a federal lawsuit saying keeping them out of the legislative building is unconstitutional. The attorney has been on several of the lawsuits against Governor Steve Sisolak's executive orders. The latest states that keeping them out of the building stops them from engaging in constitutionally protected lobbying activities and quashes the spirit of the legislative process. The lobbyists include Janine Hansen and Melissa Clement. A few more of the criminal justice and police reform bills have been written this week. Assembly Bill 1577 seems targeted at incidents like the one in Central Park last year, where a white woman called police on a black man simply because he told her to put a leash on her dog. The Nevada bill would allow people to sue someone for calling the police on an individual because of their race, gender identity, or other protected classes, specifically if the person knowingly causes law enforcement to respond to a location to harass, embarrass, humiliate, or remove someone. No hearing is scheduled yet. We're about a week away from some students returning to classrooms in Clark County. It will be hybrid learning, a mix of in-person and online. 8 News Now reporter Kristen Drummond shows us what one principal is doing to try to keep classrooms clean and safe.
Dondero Elementary School gets ready to welcome back students. Pictures show A and B stickers on desks to designate the cohort, marking where students sit 6 feet apart depending on the day in class. On the playground, colorful markers with the dolphin mascot indicate social distancing. Staff will give each student a backpack to carry their computer between home and the classroom. Each child will also receive supplies specifically for their desk. But don't expect this at all campuses.
Each school has different needs based on the population they serve, and they obviously are going to be prepared for that.
Ryan Lewis is principal at Gerheim Elementary School. He says collaboration continues among his colleagues.
Kind of vetting out procedures, having ideas, troubleshooting as things come arise.
He remains mindful of the 4th and 5th graders unable to start hybrid learning yet. He submitted a plan to bring voluntary small groups on campus.
We are ready to be able to invite those kids back when we're given the green light to do so, and give them the attention they deserve as well.
There's still a lot of confusion and unknown answers.
Rebecca Garcia questions the lack of consistency. The Nevada Parent Teacher Association president tells me some students already came back for tutoring while others continue waiting.
Very little reassurance from the district about how equity is going to be ensured for all students.
Kristen Drummond, 8 News Now.
Some teachers will be back in the classroom starting Monday to prepare for March 1st. Controversy over the airport. The look at the unanimous decision by the Clark County Commission to change the name of McCarran and the popular choice they passed over.
For less.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
The Southern Nevada Health District did not get its shipment of Moderna vaccine doses this week. Anyone expecting their second Moderna dose will be rescheduled to next week. And those 65 and older will be eligible to get the vaccine next week at pharmacies. That's on top of Nevada already receiving a low amount of the vaccine. We are second to last in the number of vaccines per capita. Orko Manna has more on the effort to get vaccines into seniors' arms.
We're finally going to be able to go outside and not fear dying.
66-year-old Shirley Bryce is thrilled that Nevadans aged 65 to 69 can get the COVID-19 vaccine starting next week. She's been fighting for this moment, even creating an online petition.
A little late, but certainly we're thrilled with Governor Sisolak and his team. They listen to our concerns and they're taking action.
But those seniors will only be able to get the vaccine at pharmacy partners for right now, and the supply is limited.
We know it will not be enough to cover the range of Nevadans in this age group. We continue to ask Nevadans to be patient as we await increased allocations from the federal government.
The goal is to expand vaccination events for those 65 and older by March 1st. Meanwhile, the governor is in constant contact with the White House to get more vaccines.
We're getting the vaccines that we get into people's arms.
And although a lot is still uncertain, Nevada seniors say one thing is clear.
At least we see motion in vaccinating our age group.
We have a lot of vaccine-related links at 8newsnow.com to help you. One of the more controversial topics this week, the Clark County Commission voted unanimously to change the name of the airport from McCarran to Harry Reid.
I believe that it's kind of a political move to put Senator Reid's name on it. If you're really concerned about Senator McCarran and some things that he might have done, well, okay, then call it the Las Vegas Metropolitan Airport.
He isn't a man of many words, but of profound words. When meeting him in 2005, he spoke about the growing Latino community in a way I had not heard in Nevada.
The name change was pushed by County Commissioner Tick Sagerbloom. Then pretty much every Democratic politician in the state endorsed the idea. A few Republicans, like former Governor Brian Sandoval, did as well. There was not a lot of opposition to removing McCarran's name, but much of the public was in favor of renaming it Las Vegas International Airport. In fact, Las Vegas International Airport was trending on Twitter for 2 straight days. Our poll last week showed about 3/4 of people opposed naming it after Reid. The next step is submitting the plan to the FAA. That will take at least a few months to go through. Sagerbloom says it will be funded by private donations. One of the youngest members of the legislature ever.
I've been welcomed by the Republican side pretty warmly.
Up next, we hear from 24-year-old state senator and public health professional Fabian Donate. Plus,
I'm Alexandra Limon in Washington. Democrats introduced a new sweeping immigration proposal. I'll have
At 6, only on 8 News Now. You're watching Politics Now.
President Joe Biden says he wants Congress to pass a sweeping immigration reform bill. On Thursday, Democrats introduced a bill to try to make that a reality. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent Alexandra Limon breaks it down for us.
On Thursday, Democratic lawmakers introduced the U.S. Citizenship Act, President Joe Biden's vision for immigration reform, with a path to citizenship for dreamers and other undocumented immigrants.
They pick our fruit, they pack our meat, they keep our food supply strong, even in times of crisis like this pandemic. They are essential workers, so essential that our economy would not function without them.
New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez and California Congresswoman Linda Sanchez say the bill will help the U.S. economy grow.
Will increase worker productivity, create more jobs, improve the wages of all workers, and reduce our deficit. And if you don't believe me, just ask any economist.
To get through Congress, the bill would need support from 60 senators, a challenge considering some Republicans are already expressing opposition.
In a statement, Republican Senator Rick Scott said, granting amnesty to 11 million illegal immigrants on a timeline quicker than any major legislation offered in recent history, without including any funding whatsoever to enhance border security, is reckless and would fuel a never-ending cycle of illegal immigration. Democrats say their bill will modernize and improve border security and address the root causes of immigration from Central America. In Washington, Alexandra Limon.
One of the newest members of the Nevada legislature is also one of the youngest ever. State Senator Fabian Donate is just 24 years old, but already works in public health. He's a Democrat and was appointed to replace Ivana Cancela when she left. Christian Cazadis has been interviewing members of the Hispanic Legislative Caucus for us, and this week talked with State Senator Donate.
Seeing the folks, the Republican side there, just seeing how that you're going to have to work with them, to get things done here. What are some of the challenges? What are you kind of seeing here moving forward?
I've been welcomed by the Republican side pretty warmly. They have been receptive to some of the issues that I've brought forth before them. I think that they understand the jeopardy that our state is in right now because of this public health crisis. And given my background in public health, they have been understanding to some of the issues that I'm trying to push forward. Public health usually gets politicized in some circumstances, but for the most part, we're all fighting for the same thing, which is to make sure that everyone is back to their regular health, that we can reopen our schools and our economy is stabilized.
Anything kind of mapped out for the next few weeks or months? Yeah,
so my legislation is going to prioritize trying to fix and get us on the right track to solve this pandemic. As I have already documented, is that there are a lot of problems that stand in our way to making sure that we reach the threshold of bringing everything back to normal. Right now, the greatest concern that we have at this moment in time is making sure that our communities are vaccinated and that we increase health literacy, which is do people actually understand the information that is being received to them. So the legislation that I want to put forward is to increase, to allow employers for them to pay their employees to get tested and vaccinated so that they don't have to worry about taking time off to do that and any of the lost wages that they might not be able to recuperate. That is going to be one of the things that I try to entertain within the next few months. And also expanding translational services, because as we know, just not everyone has the ability to speak in English within the state. And if we're able to communicate better as to some of the outcomes of what can be achieved through this vaccine, then we can start to fix a lot of the public health issues that we are recognizing right now at this moment because of the pandemic.
Donate also said he wants to carry on some of the priorities of his predecessor, Ivana Cancela. That includes pushing for drug pricing transparency and bills that address climate change.